Peter, welcome to OFM, where metabolic health matters podcast. And I've been meaning to have this conversation for a long time, but we're probably going to have a couple of conversations. Welcome to the podcast, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Peter Mortimer. I'm a Flagstaff-based ultrarunner, 42 years old. I wouldn't consider myself a professional ultrarunner because I have a full-time job, but I do like to compete.
But you do compete at a high level.
I do, or I try to.
No, you do. And you have a pretty full and hectic time job. I mean, it gives you flexibility, but it also has other consequences in that. So tell us what you do in your day job.
I work for a medical device company in orthopedics. So I bring in, if you have your hip, knee, or shoulder replaced, I come in to the operating room with the surgeon, and I'm probably good chance I'm in there on that procedure. And so I've been doing this for the last 20 years. There's lots of different sides to my job, but ultimately I'm on the surgeon's schedule. So I haven't had a regular 9-to-5 schedule in over 20 years. So I take my time when I can get it. I run when I can get it, and and sometimes I got to make sacrifices. Missing out on stuff.
Okay, and then apart from that, you have a full-time partner, a couple of Basset Hounds, a couple of kids that are kind of growing up.
Yep. Yeah. So doing the dad thing, and then the coaching thing. I have a lot of spinning plates, I guess you could say.
You certainly do. You have a great partner, though. So
yeah, she's amazing.
She's completely behind and supportive of you, which is a wonderful thing. So we want to give a shout out to Siska Vasquez, because she won't give a shout out to herself.
Yeah. Yeah, she's my backbone. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and that's today's conversation. You've got a race coming up here in a couple of weeks, right? You got the Mogollon Monster.
Yep. Yeah, it's a 100-mile race out in Pine, Arizona. It's a hard rock qualifier, very technical, up and down the Mogollon Rim, and just looking to just take my fitness from this year and just throw into another 100-miler.
Right on. And how many weeks are you out from your last race?
My last big one, the spine, was in June. So
okay, so you've had a little bit of a break.
I mean, I'm
always a break from racing, but you've been doing big stuff.
Yeah, I've been staying busy.
Yeah. No, cool. And that's when, in September, middle of September, end of September?
September 9th.
September 9th. So it's coming up quick.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I was asking about that is what I want to do is, today I want our conversation to focus on, metabolic health, where you are. We'll talk a little about the data we've got about you and all that. But I really want to talk about your spine race, the race, how it went. And tangentially to that, I'd like to cover the effects of sleep deprivation, because you ran that in a seriously jet-lagged condition, correct?
10 out of 10 would not recommend.
Yeah, this is like, don't do this at home, because Peter did it and got away with it. He literally got away with it.
It was awful.
But this is a good point to discuss the importance of maintaining a circadian rhythm, getting sleep, getting the recovery. There's times when that's not possible, like this, but you want to kind of minimize that, because it does have serious health consequences, both short and long term.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Peter, how long have you been an OFM athlete, Vespa user, OFM athlete? When did we? It just seems like yesterday I was at your house in Flagstaff, but I know it's been probably 5 years or something.
2017.
2017.
Yeah. So that was the summer of 2017, because I did Zane Grey earlier that year, and Nick Curry passed me at the 50K mark, and he just looked incredible. And I'm like, what is this guy doing that I'm not? And he threw me your name, and then I went to one of your talks. And after that, I think it was I did touches 100K leading up to Bigfoot 200, but that was kind of my first race on Vespa OFM, which was my second 200-mile race.
Yeah.
And I finished that one 24 hours faster than Tahoe on a harder course. And I just never felt so great running. It was amazing.
Yeah. And before that, just a brief overview of what got you running, because you were typical of most people, just a working slave and gaining weight and all that, right?
Yeah, I had a horrible diet, again, slave to the system. It was hard to kind of get in a rhythm. I was raising two young kids. I was working, 60, 80 hours a week. So just not, and then I ended up going through a divorce. So I just had all these kind of compounding stress, stress eating, all this bad stuff. And I was overweight anyway. So I needed to lose some weight. And that's kind of why I fell into running. Which, it's not how you lose weight, but it was a good way of getting my butt out of the door and getting some exercise.
It's a tool to lose weight.
Yeah. So I just, after that, I just kind of fell in love with it once I found trail running. And, but yeah, I was a middle of the pack runner. I wouldn't say fast by any means.
Yeah. And, but you had the typical ups and downs with energy. Did you start to have GI issues at that point, or?
Yeah. Once I got into the 100K plus, I would start dealing with stomach issues. And at that time too, I was still like, I had no idea what I was doing nutritionally. I could scrape by on like 50 milers and everything. But once I started getting to the 100K, 100 mile distance, it was definitely become more of a challenge, eating the right things. And then I just knew I had to change something. And I kind of heard rumblings about running fat adapted. And I'm like, well, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. And so in other words, you were eating probably the typical high carb diet. A lot of processed food.
Yeah. That, I always used to laugh and say, like bread, it's like, it's been around since the beginning of time, and like, how is bread bad? But then you start thinking about the way bread's made nowadays and the way it's made in this country versus other countries. It's not the same,
Well, and how much bread or processed carbs we eat compared to how little we really do on a chronic basis. I mean, there's just a whole compounding of things on top that provide a huge metabolic load that your body has to deal with, because it's essentially a lot of sugar, right?
Yeah. Well, and changing my diet and going down this path really opened my eyes to kind of what we're eating and how I feel. And
and I know you're loving life, because I mean, you got the whole Pete's Meats going, and you're grilling and eating that. And I remember when you'd gotten into it after talking with me, and you're just totally loving life. So it's really enjoyable, right?
Absolutely. I feel better all the time. I'll have cheat days, and eat stuff every now and again, but I suffer for it. And it's interesting the way I do it versus the way like Jeff Browning does it, or McKnight, or all those guys. There's like, if you look along the spectrum, we're all along like trying to get the same effect, but we all are on different ends of the meter a little bit. Like we all, like Jeff's definitely more protein based like I am, but he's definitely throwing down more fruits, than I do. Whereas then there's other guys on the scale that are just like, go more on the fat side, than the protein side. And so it is really interesting to see kind of how that works. And I think that's just everyday eating. I just try and eat whole foods, meat and vegetables.
I found with my journey, like now I can pretty well eat whatever I want. I mean, like you say, you pay for it if you're eating crap, but I don't have those, I've gotten myself so adapted and really worked on the third tier of the OFM pyramid, which is stomach and gut health, and getting the stomach lining really robust, and really focusing on developing a robust and diverse biome. that has huge implications for tolerance to different foods, including crap. Doesn't mean you can eat it all the time, but once in a while, no big deal, you know.
Yeah.
And also just keeping the inflammation down, disease prevention, all that stuff.
Well, anytime you cut anything out for a long period of time and revisit it, you'll realize quickly, like, oh man, this makes me feel like crap. But in the moment when you're just on that diet, that's how you feel every day. You just feel,
yeah, and your body adapts to it.
It does, you know, and you get tired of being tired, you know. But so you have to. I think it's great to cut that stuff out every once in a while and kind of see what your body actually likes, what it doesn't.
Yeah, and I find that you know, with the whole animal eating, where I do eat a lot of collagen-rich foods. I'm definitely either supplement or eating liver or heart, in addition to muscle meat. I mean, it's almost scary how little I need to eat. I mean, I'm like you. Cook me up a good ribeye or a New York or a sirloin. If somebody puts 20 ounces, 24 ounces of steak in front of me, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
But do I do that every day? Do I think it's good? Nah, no.
Yeah.
It's way more than I need. I can do just fine on 10 or 12 ounces, and that'll fill me up, and I probably could do fine on 6 or 8. You know, in terms of what I actually needed, 6 or 8 is probably good.
Sure.
12 to 14 is what'll satiate me. But like I said, if you put 24 ounces in front of me, a big old porterhouse in front of me, I'm wolfing it down.
Same.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of so I have a bias, but knowing I have a bias, you know, I can step back from that and say, yeah, you know, if you're doing this right, you really don't need too much. And you feel the same way, right? You feel better eating less when you're running.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't, compared to probably a lot of the athletes, I don't eat a lot. I'm learning to put more in as my efforts get harder and pushing harder, especially with like strategic carbing. But I have to remind myself and force myself, like, hey, get some calories down, you know, and like I know you feel great right now. Just keep the tank topped off.
Yeah, but that tank isn't very big. It's like you notice we're both pretty good sized guys compared to most people, right? You're 6'3", I'm 6'2".
Yep.
Right. Yep. And I just like, I'll eat something and I'm just like, oh man, I feel full and bloated, and that's it. Just in the story. You know, not much. So okay, so you've been doing this since 2017 and been really successful, right? Even though it's a side gig, and you, like you say, you've been pretty successful, won some races, been able to do a lot of epic stuff. But this summer, and you have a very interesting way to approach things. You tend to not run a race twice, right? Yeah.
Some local stuff I might throw down again on occasion, but just, you know, for the most part, like the big stuff, I'm one and done. It's however I do that day. It's however I do. And so I just try to get
the destination races.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when you get into hard rock?
I'll do it, and then I'll go on to the next thing.
Okay.
Just that's like really Western. Cool. Yeah.
Because most people who once they're in hard rock, they're like captured.
Yeah. I mean, I run out there, you know, whenever I can. So it's just, again, it's getting the atmosphere. I do it one time and let someone else have a chance.
Yeah. I agree with you. So this year, your big race was this spine race in England. Would you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's a 268-mile race along the Pennine Way, which is like this big historic national trail that runs kind of from the Yorkshire Dales all the way to the border of Scotland. The race itself has 5 checkpoints or aid stations. So that's it. So you're running like the first aid station is like 42 miles, the next one 64 miles later. So it's very much self-supported between the checkpoints. They feed you and stuff at the checkpoints, but no markers. So you're basically
like you're navigating.
Yeah. I'm going across open face mountains. I mean, you'll see signs for the Pennine Way, but then you'll be miles for like, just going through mountains, and sometimes you'll see what's like, well, it looks like a path, and then it turns out it's a sheep's path, and then you realize, crap, I need to be all the way up there. So you really have to kind of, have your wits about you, staying on top of it. So compared to other 200s I've done where you just kind of look for the next high, like hanging from the tree, you really have to be on it all the time, which makes it even more difficult.
So there's a lot of orienteering, and it sounds like because of the landscape, it's spatial orienteering because it's big, open, vast areas, correct?
Yeah. So and again, the terrain is not, cut out single track. You're going across like crazy pedestals, cliff edges, just mountains with like mounds of peat where you just can roll your ankle at any moment. So you really have to watch your footing.
Wow.
Marshes, bogs, all that stuff.
So it has a whole variety of terrain, from marshes and bogs to these literal spines where you're way up on a mountain on a ridge line that's less than 2 feet wide.
Yeah. It's got it all. There's even a section, I think, where it must have been several miles, but it's down at a river bottom, basically up on the edge of at a base of a cliff. And so you have this giant river, and you have this, like, you're rock hopping for miles essentially along this bottom until you get to, I think it's called Cauldron Snout, which is this insane waterfall. You come around this corner and just majestic. That was like right before I started hallucinating.
I was going to ask you, did that really happen, with that part of the hallucinations?
Yeah, I think that was real.
Okay, cool. So it's 268 kilometers or miles?
Miles. Yeah.
Miles. Ooh.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What's the time limit for that race?
I can't remember. I want to say it's like 6 days or something like that.
Okay, so they're pretty generous.
Yeah. There's cutoffs and sweeps like everything else. And then they've got like people that run, there's like the North Spine or just the South Spine, and they've got like sprint versions of that. So there's like different races. You may come across runners, but for the most part, I was by myself for hours and hours at a time. Like I go an entire day without really seeing anybody other than like the odd tourist, but as far as like runners go, so you're out there by yourself in the elements. It's pretty remarkable.
Wow. And how many entrants this year?
I want to say there's maybe 160. Don't quote me on that. So
okay. And how many finished, roughly?
I don't know the answer to that either. I'm not very good at statistics on this race, apparently.
Okay. No, it's all good. I mean, it's conversational stuff to kind of give the audience a feel.
It's labeled, Britain's toughest foot race for a reason. And I did the summer version. I mean, there's an actual winter version in January, which is just, even for myself, thinking about doing the winter version, it's insane to me that people do it.
Yeah, things could go bad, really, really bad. But I guess there's people that are hardy enough in the cold. I'm not one of them.
Yeah. Well, and then navigating on top of that, and the long stretches between aid stations. I mean,
yeah,
it's brutal.
Yeah, wow. So this was your A race this year. So you finished second overall. How much further? How many hours were you behind the first place finisher?
Quite a ways.
Yeah.
A lot of that had to do with how the beginning of the race started. So it was just, he went out of the gates really hot. I settled in, and I think he had run the race before too, which kind of helps. I'd everything going against me from the get-go, as far as like jet lag and the travel. It was at the solstice, so you're only getting 5 hours of darkness, per night.
Tell us about that. When did you? How many days from before the spine race what was your lead up to that in terms of travel? You live in Arizona. You're traveling to the UK, so there's 8-9 hour time difference there.
Yeah, it's just probably you're looking at 16 hours travel, something like that. And then I think we landed at 6:30 in the afternoon, their time. Didn't get to bed till 1 o'clock the next morning. The next day's registration, and then seeing family, and then kit checks, all that stuff. And then the next day was the race. So
Wow.
it wasn't until like that morning where I was at the start line that I just kind of had this wave of exhaustion come over me, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be tough.
Yeah, because I find when I travel internationally, that first day arriving, your adrenaline's so kicked in that you kind of can ride through it.
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah.
it's that second, third day that just the bottom falls out.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. And yeah, I mean, the beginning of the race, you're kind of still got a little bit of adrenaline going, but as the day goes on, and then the weather and everything else, it became harder and harder. And for me, it was, again, I hallucinated after that first night, which I haven't hallucinated on any race ever. So it's, for me, even just to go a day in, for a guy that's used to doing multi-day stuff, I knew first I thought I was having a mental breakdown but I was like, okay, this is what people talk about, and this is where I'm at already, that far in the well. And I really tried to do my strategic, sleeping, where I take, 15, 20 minutes at a time, but it was never enough. It was just like, because I was already just so deep starting out. And, later in the race, I'd come into an aid station, or I'd like go nap somewhere, and people would say, when you set a timer, and I would just say no. It became like, I'm going to sleep until I wake up. And then when I wake up, then I'll just run, because I was so tired that my brain couldn't connect to my legs for moving properly. Like everything was inefficient. I wasn't in my usual groove, and like stuff that I would easily run, I just like could not get it together. I was just trying to stay awake, and I just got tired of fighting it.
Were you sleepwalking?
Oh yeah, did some of that, which I've done sleep running in races, like strategically on like fire roads. And I mean, I did it again this race, but on some areas. But yeah, it's just, it got to the point where I was so far behind, and the first place was running away with it. I'm like, okay, I just need to like refocus on what I'm doing, get me through this. And again, as a foreigner, so to speak, coming over to run there, I was at a disadvantage. I didn't know the trail. I'm navigating, where people are used to navigating out there. It's just the fell runners are just much more attuned to the landscape. So I had a lot more going against me, and the sleep didn't help.
Yeah. So when you took naps, did you take naps in and out, mostly at the aid stations, but out there in the field too when you're on the trail?
I slept on the side of a mountain. I slept on a park bench. I slept in 2 different bathrooms, one of which I didn't even know I fell asleep in. I sat down on this toilet, and then next thing I know, I was like on the floor against the door, because they were like banging on it. And there's certain areas they don't want you sleeping, because they've got these trackers on you, and it's because they're dead zones. So they want to, like, it's a safety concern. And that was one of those like dead zone areas. And the guy's banging on the door. He's like, "You can't bivvy up in here, mate." And I'm like, "I'm not bivvying up." And I just open up the door, and I'm like, I have no idea where I am, what's going on. And then I realize, I'm like, shit, I just passed out on the floor. It was a clean bathroom, but I was like, it was just warm, and I just sat down for a second. I was just like,
that nice warm feeling of a bathroom and just relaxing your muscles, and boom.
Yeah. And they got a good little laugh out of that. And then I there was this farm that I was trying to get to after that, and there's this lady there that helps take care of the runners and everything, and she had this little bed, and this bed, like my dog bed, might have been a step up, but I sat down on it, and I was like, I'm going to take a quick kip, and I was out. And then she's like, you want me to set timer? I was like, no. And when I woke up, like Rory, third place, he was just sitting right next to me. And that happened a couple of times, because again, later in the race, I was like, stop setting the alarm. I'll just sleep. I wake up third place would show up. I'm like, all right, let's go. And then I take on ahead, and run my heart out. And then I, fall asleep again, wake up, third place was there. All right, time to go.
So second and third place, you guys were just kind of running sort of close together then.
Yeah, I'd say the top 5 were like within, hours of each other throughout a majority of the race early on. After day 1, I think we started spreading out a little bit more, but the last checkpoint when I saw Rory, we got there and his feet were pretty beat up and we hadn't really had anybody to run with. So I was like, hey, we'll hike this last part out together. It's, 42 miles. We'll do as much as we can. And I ended up going about 26 miles with him until the 4th place guy caught up to us on this hut. And he was taking a nap. And I was like, I came here to Podium. And the guy had taken off ahead and I chased him down, which was another thing. Again, it's going back to the OFM and how good you feel, like, especially in this multi-day stuff. It was, I'm on day, 4 and, granted, I just hiked the last 26 miles, but it's a lot of vert. And all of a sudden I was able to just turn on the jets and just start like hammering.
Yeah, popped an ultra concentrate and hammered.
Yeah.
10 minutes later, you're hammering. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which, was kind of fun for me because I had that race exhilaration, which I really hadn't felt all race because again, I was more battling myself, I think, than anything else. But yeah, that final descent was pretty amazing.
Well, what were your thoughts in terms of battling yourself during the race? What do you, besides hallucination, what else comes up in the spectrum of self-defeating purposes? Because your body's really trying to get you to rest, right? So it's really gonna mess with you to do that. So just for entertainment purposes, can you share some of your own private thoughts out there in the fell?
Yeah, well, so again, going back to sleep deprivation, I reached this small village, and then there was like a long stretch, they call like Hadrian's Wall, before I hit that bathroom where I passed out and the farm. But there was a section there, I remember, where I came to the sign and I turned on the sign and then I came back to the sign and I was like, okay, this is weird. And I ended up coming to the same sign like 3 times. And I was like, I was losing my shit because I was out in the middle of nowhere. I was so tired and I'm like navigating. I'm like, I went different directions, but I ended up at the same spot. And I'm like, this is it. This is my personal hell. Like, I'm like stuck here forever. So that was one of those moments.
And this wasn't a hallucination. This was real.
Yeah, this was real. The hallucination part, that was creepy. I came up over this ridge and yeah, I remember I looked up and I saw this man and he was albino. He had red eyes, full white pasty skin, and he was wearing like a full white sheer suit, like a tux almost, with a long top hat. And he was on this white bicycle. Everything was white, but just vibrant, and just see the red in his eyes. And he was giving me like the come hither look. And I just stopped dead in my tracks and I'm just staring at this thing. I'm like, this is it. I'm losing my brain cells right now. And then came to and realized that like, oh, this is where I'm at. I've never been this far. I've seen like little shadows move, or I've kind of muttered to myself, but not full on. Just I'm seeing something that's not there. That was really freaky for me.
Wow, that's going to the well. So, obviously, the setup of the jet lag, all that probably played. That was a huge part of why things happen the way they did. But let's talk about your strategy and how the whole OFM Vespa protocol got you through in spite of the whole thing.
Yeah. So again, long stretches between. I'm not much of a gel guy. I like spring gels. They're my go-to because they're kind of lower on the carb spike, and they're kind of real pureed food. that between that and the Vespa, you need to eat as much regular food as possible
on a race like that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it's just you're running for days on end. You can't survive on gels. You gotta eat regular food. So early on, I was eating pork pies and sausage rolls, and which held up really well, like for a couple of days without refrigeration, believe it or not. So I was just packing those because they're just protein, fat, sodium. They were easy to get down, and there are a lot of things that for me personally I can't find in the States. And so I was kind of going to town on that sort of food. And then coming into the aid stations, they had curry. They had all kinds of different food. So
good.
I was always eating regular food. They're really strict on you have to carry so many calories between aid stations, and they're actually strict on only so much of the calories can be from powder, only so much can be from real food, and only so much can be from like gels. So you can't just go, oh, I'm just going to use Tailwind, or I'm going to use, whatever. It's just, you have to kind of, and that's, again, it's kind of a safety thing, it's just our bodies are going to adapt differently, especially when you're going out like up these crazy mountains in the middle of like, rainstorms, it's just like a little gel's not going to cut it. You gotta be able to eat regular food, get your body going.
That's a big mistake. A lot of fat adapted people make is when it turns cold and wet, they need, I have to tell them, you got to get some extra calories, preferably hot food, hot liquid, because you got to maintain core body temperature, and your body will turn up the metabolism to provide that heat, and that's the way to do it, is start giving yourself excess energy, and then, with that, you got to keep moving at a pretty good pace to generate that energy. If you're just shuffling along, you're not generating enough energy to maintain core body temp. Yeah. And I can imagine on those windswept fells up in the mountains at night with the mist blowing, it had to have been miserable.
It wasn't fun. So another funny thing that happened. I bought these rain pants, probably a month or two before going over there, and they're super light. Testing them out once in Flagstaff, but it wasn't like a heavy rain, but they did the trick. I'm like, all right, these are going to be great. And I got out there, and they didn't have a really good elastic band around the waist or a tie. So it became so saturated because it rained from the afternoon through like the next afternoon. I mean, just straight. And so in the middle of the night, I'm like holding up my pants, trying to keep dry and stuff. I was like, this is ridiculous. And I actually took the pins off my bib and pinned them to my pants, to my shirt, to try and hold them up. And that didn't really work too well. And finally, I was just like, again, talking about core body temperature. I was like, this isn't working. It's just getting annoying. I'm just going to go shorts and just keep my core. Like I could change you have to carry extra clothes with this. I had extra dry clothes. I'm going to change and get dry, and then just shorts. It'd be fine. And so I found this sheep's barn in the middle of this thunderstorm, and it was just in the middle of this barn, there's this broken down cart and this oil drum, which is kind of like 45 degrees, but like the entire ground is just sheep shit everywhere. So I'm like, all right, how am I going to take my shoes off and do all this stuff? And it was kind of hilarious. I'm balancing all my kit on top of this oil drum and on one foot, and stripping off my clothes in this like some random person's barn on a mountain in the 1 o'clock in the morning, and thinking like about my life choices. But got on those dry clothes and immediately just changed my life. All of a sudden just started moving better. And
yeah, when you get wet clothes in that kind of conditions, it'll suck the calories out of you real quick, and then hypothermia becomes an issue.
Yep. Yeah. And even some of the trails that you would go up, they were just like flowing rivers. So you were your feet were just, you couldn't even see your feet. They were just in the trenches.
So how often were you using a Vespa, or how many Vespas did you burn a day?
I took one every, I'd say 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it gave you that base energy.
Yeah.
You're moving.
Yeah, that's, and again, probably every other hour Vespa, every other hour food is kind of how I do things. But
Mm.
again, it's if I saw a big climb coming up or something, it was like, didn't matter what time it was. I'm like, okay, get into calories and everything. I'm walking anyway. This is the time I need to be eating.
Yep, the strategic carbs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to complete the course?
I want to say it was like 93 hours. So by my standards, slow. It really is, because even, I mean, Cocodona, I did 70 something. I did Bigfoot in like 60 hours something. So, but again, just, battling, it became a battle with myself. And for second place, I think, just to come out of the sleeping well, and then again, navigating and just overall terrain, dealing with it. It's not easy terrain.
Well, and you had a strong finish. I mean, I saw the video of you finishing. You had a strong finish. You looked exhausted once you sat down, but you looked good coming in.
Yeah, I felt really good coming in. Funny, right after I finished, I took a quick shower, got cleaned up, immediately hopped on a train to Edinburgh, toured that all day long, and then hopped on another train and went to London that very same night. So I didn't stop.
Wow.
My feet weren't too happy with me. I mean, I had a little swelling from the walking around, but it was fine.
Yeah. Were you able to get some sleep?
When I got on that train to London, it was just lights out.
Right. Right. So everything's working for you. So, with OFM, we try to take a look at, from multidimensional aspect. And, one of the things we stress is downtime and sleep. And I'm not big on the Aura rings. I know a lot of people use them. You might use them, but it's just getting sleep, turning the volume down on looking at the screen time and doing things at night, so you can kind of set that pattern to go to sleep and get good sleep and keep that circadian rhythm. And so having really gone to actually one of the things I love about what we do are collaborations. I feel like I'm in a collaboration with people like you and Jeff and even the back of the Packers. You just learn so much, right?
Yeah.
Because with the ultra endurance, we actually are pushing the bodies to that extreme level to see what's possible, right?
Absolutely.
You can't learn much by staying well within the guardrails, which is what normal healthcare does.
Yeah.
And so, we've learned a tremendous amount. So in terms of this race and disrupting your circadian rhythm with severe jet lag, I'm looking at this as a big learning experience for not just you, but for me. And it kind of validates this whole importance of normally maintaining a circadian rhythm. And I, has that been impressed upon you?
Absolutely. And I've talked a little bit about it before, is, the 200s are much different as far as, your body chemistry gets so messed up afterwards.
Oh yeah, I get jacked. Yeah.
It's
I've never done a 200, but I've crewed and paced for one where the crew and the pacer were leapfrogging, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's just as bad for the crew. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not moving as much, but the loss of sleep. I mean, when this one especially, it's like so one of the things I'm always very aware of is just my own dealing with my own depression post race. And that's a very normal thing, getting post run depression. I used to get it on the smaller races. I don't get them on like the hundreds and 50s anymore, but I do get them on like the 200s. And a lot of that is just, I know where I'm at, and I'll tell Siska, I'm like, hey, right now my head's not in a good space. Like, I'm fine. I'm not going to do anything crazy, but I want you to know like where my head's at. Cause I really feel you get like a separation kind of anxiety. Like, you've been out there for a long period of time and you're sleep deprived. It's an amazing, epic, out of this world experience, something that you push your body through that you don't get to experience. Most people never experience. And then all of a sudden you're like back at work Monday morning and you're going through the motions and you're there, but you're not there. You know what I mean? You're just keep thinking back to the trail, or you keep thinking back to, what experiences you had out there, and or being unplugged is just like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
All these little things and like everyday stressors and stuff. And
well, you kind of become hyper aware of what I call the man-made construct and how it's really kind of far removed from our evolutionary reality.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. And it takes me, even mingling, talking with people, I just have a hard time coming back to it, because I just feel like I'm like on this other plane, for whatever reason. And again, it's like I can carry through the motions of having a conversation, but in my head, I feel like I'm just still not quite with it. So it generally takes me a week or two to get used to that.
Wow. And how was your recovery on this thing? It probably took a while, because you really pushed yourself, like going to the race, doing the race, and then doing the family thing with Siska and your kids. Because you were born in England, correct?
Yep. So my dad lives over there, my uncle and cousins, and so a bunch of family then came out, and I brought my sister came out there, my kids came out. It was just kind of a big kind of family reunion, and so it was really great. But it's to
but
go.
You had a lot of you had a lot of stuff going on. You didn't get really any downtime other than sleeping on the train from Edinburgh to London.
From the moment we landed, it was like meeting the family. We went out for dinner, had drinks, and then we're at the Airbnb. We're like catching up until 1 o'clock in the morning. And the next day, I wake up early, because that's what, as soon as the sun comes up, I'm up. And then I went for a little run, and we went out to this town and went to, I think it was called the Devil's Arse, like this tour the next day. Like anyone that knows me, that whenever I do these races, like immediately after I'm doing something, when I was in New Zealand earlier this year, I went whitewater rafting the next day. When I did Hurt 100, I went body surfing the next day with my son. I'm always, to me, it's like I take the time to do the race, and they're there to support me and everything, but now it's their time. And so, yeah, immediately after the race, it was tour, and, we're in London for a couple of days and touring around Camden, and I'm just like constantly moving, and the first day it hurt. I'm not gonna lie. It was, because they're all like ready to go, and I'm moving slow, which for them was probably great, because I'm normally way ahead, just, my big stride and everything. But by the end, by the time we got back home, within a week, I was running, Mount Humphreys again. Physicality was there. And I think it was because of how I moved. My only real big push of the race was in probably the last 16 miles, because you just want to run as possible on those.
Yeah, and with this, from the start of the race through until the end, when you really started to put the hammer down, your actual intensity level and all that was impaired by the fact you had sleep deprivation, right?
Sure. Yeah. So, and then a month later, I did my Humphreys summit attempts. I went up Humphreys 5 times. So physicality wise, I feel great. Like it's been a great year for running, and injury free. And again, I listened to my body. Yesterday's run, I went up Humphreys, and I immediately felt like trash. I was like, this is not going to be a good day if I try and run it, because that's one of those trails, if you got heavy legs, you could have an injury. And so I decided to just hike it out, and I hiked out the entire summit. And today I went out there, and I felt great, So
yeah, no, I totally get that, because that's how I'm gauging my runs. There's days I have it, and there's days I don't have it, and I need to figure out what I'm doing to lead up to that, and just go with it, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the beauty things I'm really learning and trying to coach people on is getting in tune with your body, because we live in this technology age, and I think we've surrendered we've surrendered our sovereignty to all these gadgets and metrics. It's like when your body's working the way it's supposed to work, your own intuition and your own feedback mechanisms are the most powerful tools you have. You know, you don't need your heart rate monitor to tell you your heart's racing, right?
Yep, exactly. I always just use it as a quick double check, but I'm same thing. I run by feel. And if I don't feel like I'm having a good day, especially if I'm running somewhere that's could be dangerous, where if I have heavy legs and toe punt a rock, I could send me flying. I'm just not going to risk it, especially with a race coming up.
Yeah, so well, like I say, the data corroborates the experience; it doesn't drive it. But in today's world, so many people are allowing technology to determine, that drives it.
Yep. So everything's been, and again, even coming up yesterday where I felt tired, I have to put myself in check all the time. I'm like, I just got back from Goat Rocks Wilderness in Washington and did 62 miles over 3 days with 17K vert, not counting whatever I ran earlier in the week. So it's just I had a big week, and I'd have to like constantly remind myself of that, of like, I'm not a machine as much as I'd like to think it, and I need to take a breather every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's where the magic happens, is in that breather, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not doing the damage, you don't need as much breather as people think. You just need to make sure you are getting good sleep, keeping your circadian rhythm good, and having downtime. You're not constantly frantic, and that it means just interacting with Siska or just hanging out, cooking dinner. The kind of stuff where you can just tune off from all of this modern life that's impacting us now.
Yeah. And I have found myself, since coming back from that race, that I just, I don't check social media quite as much. I'm just happy. Like I've just gone for walks. Sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to go for a walk outside and just be outside. And
nice. I noticed you said something about you get up early with the sun, and as far as since we're talking about circadian rhythm, that's one of the practices I try to do. Is when the sun comes up, I'm exposing my eyes, my skin in that morning, and it doesn't take too much, and it helps entrain your circadian rhythm in the way it's meant to. I'm imagining you do the same thing.
Absolutely, which is also why I can't go out and party late at night anymore, because I've always been one of those people, no matter, as soon as I see the sunlight come through the blinds or curtains or whatever, that's it, I'm up. So if I had a little bit too much fun the night before, I'm up regardless, which means I'm just going to suffer. I've never been one of those people where I'll just sleep in till noon and then I'll feel fine. That's not me. I wake up, I go running. I like to do my stuff. So there's been mornings where I'm just like, oh, this is just going to be suffering today because I was at a wedding last night or whatever. And then, but like the days, like when I do get my sleep properly, and because I go to bed relatively early, it just, wake up, feel great. Just same thing every day.
Yep. And that's, these are some aspects of OFM that we don't talk much about because everybody thinks it's a low carb diet, which it's not. There's plenty of carbs. Yeah. When you need plenty of carbs, you can have plenty of carbs.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But there's these subtleties of chronic stressors, circadian rhythm, vitamin D that all play into that overall package. And you're kind of living it. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover today, because like I said, you went to the extremes here and we learned a lot. And my dad actually was an airline pilot who flew for Pan American. So he flew those routes all the time. And I watched how it just destroyed him. And he was your typical pilot of that generation, military fighter pilot, and smoked, drank, sedentary lifestyle, and flying those kind of routes just it wrecks you.
Absolutely.
Occasionally it can be adaptive, but boy, if you're doing it all the time and you're not really focused on what you need to do to mitigate those effects, there's a big price you pay for it.
Yeah. So I was in Washington this last weekend, and I ran into Carl Saab randomly when we were running out on the PCT, and he's currently on track for the PCT record. And so I got to chat with him. He's Barclay alum as well, and he was one of those. I just picking his brain about kind of how he runs, because he's running 60 miles a day every day, and how he did it, and talking to his family. He had a kind of similar experience, came over, didn't have a lot of time to adjust. But he started, Southern California, he started at night. So he was running, like he came in and so I don't really think it like affected his circadian rhythm quite so much, in the fact that he just went into night running because it was on his time. And then he ended up getting flipped later as he got like further up California.
Yep.
Which I thought was pretty interesting, to see how someone else like would do something like that. Because that was my first question. I was like, man, what I did was nothing compared to the ground you're covering. But very, very, very interesting to see how he's moving. And he's moving. He's sleeping like 8 hours a night.
Yeah, so he's running a south-north PCT.
Yeah.
So he must have just started not too long ago.
He was on day 40 when I saw him. This was
wow.
Yeah. So he made it through Oregon, I think, in like 7 days.
Wow. Wow.
He is moving. And I'm saying moving, I mean, I ran like, 7-8 miles with him on the PCT, and then went up and back this peak. And then I was with another runner, Alyssa, and we were like, yeah, let's try and catch him. And I'm like, we're gonna have to move. And we were pushing. I just kept trying to push just a little bit harder than what we were running together, and ended up catching like a mile from the trailhead where the rest of our crew was and stuff. But he was motoring.
And he's fast packing.
Yep.
So he's got a pack on. He's got about a 25, 30 pound pack on.
Oh no, I mean it's like a big mountain pack. So similar to something I'd wear at Dragon's Back. So enough to get him like in between these like long sections.
Right, but he's fast packing, meaning he's not carrying 50, 60 pounds. He's carrying like 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say that much. I would say, it looked like just like a 20 liter, like
right.
Whatever. So
that's what's allowing him to move 60 miles a day, and then get a consistent 8 hours sleep.
Yeah.
He's in the zone.
Yeah. But very, the way he's moving too was kind of very reminiscent of the way I run. It's just kind of choosing your battles between, running, even on the uphill stuff. It's just moving efficiently, and another tall guy too. So it's like, it was really, really cool to watch him just destroy that trail. I mean, so cool.
If you're in Washington, he's close to finishing any day now.
Yeah, I think he had to get, 51 days was the record. So he was shooting for 50. But there were some fires. So I think he might have had to add on like an extra 50 miles or something like that. But I still, even with that, I think he'll nail it.
All right. Well, super. So you have a coaching business?
Yeah. More Miles Coaching. Relatively. Yep. I do all types of athletes. Obviously the type of stuff that I do, I can kind of cater a little bit more towards like, the big multi-day technical stuff. But yeah, everything from 5K to 100-mile plus. And then the nutritional side of it, which hopefully we're going to be getting geared up here pretty quick too.
Yeah. The whole metabolic side, the metabolic, not nutrition. Nutrition's a tool.
Yeah.
The whole metabolic side with OFM, so you can be like Peter and have this consistency. And this is one of the things we're seeing is like, I don't know how long you've been following the ultra scene, but you look at people like you and Jeff and Nick and Jesse and who else is big time OFM. You guys are consistently Benny Capel, John Olson, some of the old timers, and everybody's still running well and they're healthy. And I don't know, I've seen a lot, and I'm not trying to bag on these people, but I've seen a lot of these athletes come into the ultra scene. They're a phenom for 2 or 3 seasons, and then they're out with injuries, GI issues, anxiety, depression. It's
Yeah. Injuries, especially, like, I mean, I had my fair share early on just by pushing too hard, didn't have a coach or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember, other than taking a fall, which happens from time to time. And even that, I don't even remember the last time I had an injury. It's just, and every day, I mean, there's days where, sometimes I'm a little sore, which is to be expected. You have, hard days and you have easy days, but the fact that, I can go out and just throw down an insane amount of mileage and like go running the next day is to me is amazing, which is why I do it.
But this is actually, I mean, you guys, like I said, you guys are the data set for this, because, you're showing data nobody else has. I mean, it's like burning 1.5 grams of fat per minute is like no big deal for you guys, and you can actually, you can actually sustain over 2 grams a minute for 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, it's just like, that's a total game changer, because when you do the math, going from what most people, the science said most people only burned 0.5 gram or less, and the ceiling was 1 gram. And you guys, like, the data we got shows that for most of your running, you're at 1.5 grams a minute.
And the testing and stuff that we've done too is just kind of changed the way I run as well. I mean, you can kind of do the Maftone method and everything, and running your zones and say, like, I need to be right here. But what that, little study for us did show me that, like, along the meter, I'm like, I can be way over here and still be burning fat,
Yep.
And like, to me, that really opened my eyes, because I'm like, well, I've been underperforming, I can push it a little bit more. And
and that data we got from you the second time when you did best, but you see you had 3 big training days and they took 7 vials of blood out of you the day before the test.
Yeah.
And you still crushed it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we could get you and Jeff, in a fully recovered state, so 2 or 3 days off.
Good luck with that.
Right. And just, 2 or 3 days of easier running, and then come in. I mean, it's just like, what are the limits, right?
Yeah.
But it just, what impressed me is the fact that as soon as you guys got on the treadmill, it went from just a little bit of fat to 1 gram a minute, right? And within a couple of those phase changes, and that was out of really low level jogging up to actual running that you would actually do, 1.5 grams. Yeah, 1.5 grams. So it was just, your body was just providing the energy to meet the metabolic demand, and just the fact that you guys can stay in that zone all day long that's why you can do it. And I think that the impacts for longevity are just huge. So it's cool. So let's regroup after Moggy on and have another conversation, because I want to share your life, because you're living the life, and I mean, life is enjoyable. It's not, I mean, it's got all the challenges that everybody's life's got. I mean, you got a day job, you got teenage kids, you got 2 Basset Hounds that are kind of needy, and you have a partner, and so people, and I'm not bagging on Jeff, but Jeff's his day job is running and coaching.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's my dream.
And it's great if you can have that, because that takes out a lot of, it allows you to focus on that. And it's why, he can maintain his status as one of the top 10, arguably top 5 ultra runners. And one of the, when you look at his event status, he's doing more big stuff than everybody else.
Sure. Yeah.
You're probably second.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Between us, I mean, we both do a lot. And that's why it's hard to connect sometimes, because we love hanging out and everything. but he's always off doing some adventure. I'm always off doing some adventure, and then balancing work and everything, and just
Yeah, you're in the same
but
town, but just because
yeah,
you guys, and this stuff does take hours, right?
sure, yeah. And we're both training athletes. We're both, it's so, but yeah, it's like I love Jeff. I love like connecting with him, picking his brain. He's got great personality, and and we're both into the same you know tough stuff that wants to break you. We just we want to take it down.
Yeah, and you are. So let's after moving on, let's talk about the lifestyle, because this is about personal empowerment. It's about living a satisfied life, really happy life, but also, like in the case of you and Jeff and myself, we're also have a bigger purpose in helping others be healthy,
Yeah,
and perform well, and do it in a way where you not only bag those bucket list goals of, say, doing a rim to rim to rim, or 100-miler, or whatever's on your bucket list, but also doing it in a way that not only sustains you, but makes you more robust,
yeah.
physiologically, metabolically, and then emotionally and mentally.
And breaking the paradigm. It's just
Yeah.
like, again, it's saying there everyone can run differently, like fuel differently and stuff, but like don't get so pigeonholed to think there's only one way of doing things.
Oh.
It's just that's
Yeah. I want the audience, like I know that we've kind of hit and when I say we, I include you and Jeff, we've kind of hit a plateau with the whole fat adaptation in OFM. And I think that it's got to do with the fact that because there's no reference for OFM, it's a unique program. Vespa's a unique product. We automatically get lumped into the keto pile.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's not high carb.
Yeah.
And people,
everything has to be polarizing. That's what's so frustrating.
Right. Everything's bifurcated. It's yeah. And I'm trying to have this conversation and say to people, let's start with something we can agree with. And that is, too much sugar isn't a good thing.
Right.
But what people don't understand is throwing down a lot of carbohydrates is essentially metabolically throwing down a bunch of sugar.
Yeah, but it's the same. Carbs are sugar.
Yeah.
It's becoming metabolically stable first, like we're meant to be. And then again, using the sugars as a tool in the race and everything.
That's right.
And it's if you get your body dialed in, like Jeff and I have, I mean, you're trickling sugar, you're just barely topping it off. It's there, like
it's the icing on the cake.
Yeah. And you can pull from it anytime without having to worry, like, oh, I'm going to go too far, down this rabbit hole and not be able to crawl back up out of, and same thing with, weather variables like heat, if you can't get calories down, you can fall back on your OFM and you can still just keep trucking.
Yeah. Just stay hydrated, focus on hydration, take your Vespa, and you can just keep moving in the heat on a trickle of calories.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. But that's kind of, and for people listening to this, I'm doing some informational pieces, but I'll share a little bit. There was something on the slow twitch triathlon thing about too much sugar and causing diabetes, and some guy in Australia was training for an Ironman, and he ended up with diabetes.
Yeah.
And so that's gotten us thinking, and it's more multifaceted. I mean, his diabetes is probably based on, a bunch of factors, but the fact is he was taking in way too much sugar.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember doing UTMB in 2018, and I was at the last aid station, and I watched this guy. He had 2 Solomon flasks and filling him up with Coca-Cola completely. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of Coke. And he's like, oh, it's all I fuel on all race. I was like, you've been drinking nothing but Coca-Cola for 100 miles.
Wow.
And I'm like, I think about it, I'm like, would you sit at home just on the couch and I know you're exercising stuff, but like your sugar spike is just constantly, this is all day. I mean, like, your body, that's not
that
what your body
can't be good long term.
No.
This isn't going to end well.
Yeah. But, whether you're drinking like any sort of like just sugar water, like throughout a race, same thing. If that's what you're doing, you're on the same train, you know?
Yeah. And if you're,
it's a different name, different product.
Right. And if you're having to eat a lot of rice or pasta all the time, it's the same thing. And to a point, what happened is we're doing some stuff, and I did the calculations for a 6-month lead up to an Ironman, and basically it's 155 pounds of sugar.
That's insane.
Right?
Yeah. That's
your body weight. I'm going to Costco. I'm going to go to Costco and get one of their big carts, the big orange carts they have, and I'm going to get 3 bags of CNH sugar and put it on the bag. That's 150 pounds of sugar, and take a picture of it.
Yeah.
That's
horrifying.
And so people, I think part of the problem with OFM is I've always approached it from a cellular biological standpoint. So I lose people, right? And Jeff always likes to give me bad time. When he wants to help me correct my communication, but I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, and it's like people are geared and they're trained to look at what's in front of them,
right.
This, that, and they don't look at what's behind the scenes. So you need energy, you're burning so many calories, here's 100 calories of a gel. Problem solved. But they don't see all the other things that goes with that, nor do they want to, because it's not convenient and it forces them to think, and it's just more convenient and comfortable not to think.
Yeah, no, it's just, when I first kind of really started pushing my longer runs on Vespa, and this is kind of where Jeff and I, like I said, you talk about like the meter, and we're all kind of on different planes. Is I'll go out definitely more self-sustained on just Vespa at times than he will. Like I'll go out for 5-hour mountain runs on like just Vespa.
Yeah, me too.
I'll go fasted, like I'll have a big dinner the night before, wake up, no breakfast, coffee maybe, and then I take a Vespa
and go.
Yeah, and 5 hours out, and I'm running, I'm hiking and stuff too, but I'll carry the nutrition with me. But it's, again, going by feel, and it didn't start out that way. Initially it was like an hour, and then it was 2 hours, and then it was 3, and now as I'm going back and redoing that stuff, I'm taking in a little bit more calories on days that I really want to push hard, which is definitely kind of more the way Jeff does it. But those big days for me, when I've been out there just on just Vespa, I mean, they've really trained me for those tough races where it's extremely hot and I can't keep stuff down, and so I have to rely on either liquid nutrition, or if I'm just stuck in the middle of nowhere, I just on the Vespa and water. And it's been a game changer, because I can just keep going and going and going, just keep the run at a rate where I'm not like overheating, keeping my core body temperatures down, but at the same time just a train doesn't stop.
It's cool. Yep. All right, Peter. Well, once again, thanks. I mean, we got these 200 milers, you seem to be running out of real estate.
I just got to do long races.
I know.
Eventually I'm going to get first at one of these things. I've got placed 3 times now. So, but again, it's, it is, I take my race day, whatever I get that day, whatever's handed to me. And
well, and that's why I want to have this next conversation with you, because you're living the life. Jeff's living the life. And I see this right now with people who are mostly retired because they've gone on to do other things with their families, like Jenny Capel. I mean, she's living the dream now. She's still running. She wants to get into hard rock, but she's starting a physical therapy thing for pets, which has been right. John Olson's coaching, and his kids running first year at college cross country. So he's put it in, but here's a guy who was the 24-hour world champion, and he's still running, still feels great. And it's just about that lifestyle. Like you say, you're going to go out and have fun on your race, and you're going to push yourself, and you're going to live that whole spectrum. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. That's the preview for the next time. So once again, Peter, where can people find you?
Instagram, PJ Mortimer, Peter Mortimer on Facebook, 8moremilescoaching.com for, coaching.
8 with the
questions.
number, 8 with the letters.
Yeah, number 8moremilescoaching.com. But if you Google me, you'll find it. And maybe some other videos too.
Yeah. And yeah, Peter's one of our early OFM coaches, so you're gonna have that on top of it. So, you can be like him, living a full and great life. So thank
you, buddy. Yeah, thanks so much, Peter, for having me.
Yeah. Let's do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.